I went in and it was a really great experience for me because it was the first time somebody looked at me as a whole person. I had always been like, oh, you have Lyme. This is the condition. These are the treatments. Even when I went through the Chinese herbals, I felt like I was like a number, like, oh, these are the herbal remedies we give for this condition. And I was like, well, no one's asking what happened to me before, what was going on before all this. And were there any triggers? And like, no one was looking at me as a whole, but I felt like your center did. And that made me feel like, okay, at least they care about figuring out the whole puzzle. The treatments are unconventional in some ways, as you know. So some of them I was like, come on, and you have great nurses, but there is something that really, you have to trust your gut, because when I walked in there, I felt a sense of calm, like somewhere someone had sent me to this place and it was just okay. So, and I got better, I got better, and I was like, wow, by the time I was done with the first month of treatment, I wasn't dizzy anymore at all, which was huge because I couldn't walk around. I mean, I couldn't drive. I was like, everything would just spin. I was like, wow, why aren't I dizzy anymore? The supplements, which ordinarily I can't take a lot of supplements because they make me sick. None of them, I was taking like a bunch a day and I was like, I'm not getting sick. Why? I just felt like I was in good hands, and I was, I followed like that 6-week protocol for diet. I was really good about taking everything. I know it's hard, but I was like, I want this fixed. Like, I'm done feeling like this. And it was a decision I made that I was like, you know what, I'm going to go all in. So I did that, and I continue to feel better. And I do notice that, the thing about Lyme is that for me, and I know it's different for everyone, right? And this is why I battle against one size fits all medicine, because I had friends who were taking herbals and doing great. I had, everyone was doing something different, but that wasn't working for me. And this wasn't, I had to find my own path. And so I think innovation in medicine is integral to anyone actually getting better, because you have to know your own body. You have to figure out what's going on, and everyone's body is very different. But I do find that once you go through something like this, like I am in a more sensitive body, you gain a deeper understanding of your body, but you also know, like, for example, if I go out and I take a bunch of supplements now that aren't good quality, I feel it. I'm like, oh, I took something, I can smell toxic chemicals. If someone's painting 3 houses down using something they shouldn't be using, I'm your girl. I will tell you, I will be like, there are days when my mom's like, I'm like, did you spray perfume like upstairs? And she's like, upstairs in a separate house? Yeah. And I'm like, I'm telling you, man, like, I know, like you're more sensitive, right?
You're the canary in the cave. You're the one sensing right body, before anyone else does.
Right. Yeah. Which is kind of a superpower in itself.
It is,
because
totally.
I'm like, oh, this is, you have to look for the silver lining, but I feel much, I feel like me, like I did before, sometimes better, honestly, because it forced me to also look at diet. It forced me to look at supplements. It forced me to look at things that I would have probably never really looked at. So yeah, it was, that's the silver. And I don't say, oh, honestly, if I could go back and not get Lyme disease, I would definitely go back and not get it. But there are, you have to look at your life and say, okay, there are some things that came of this that ultimately in the long run are going to be good. But thank God I found you guys. I mean, truly, I would have been lost, because that's what happens, for people out there who've struggled. And it's not just Lyme disease, but autoimmune issues, I know, cause a lot of, you're like talking to people who don't listen, and they're like, oh, you're fine. Like, and this happened to me. I had COVID as well. I remember after COVID, after I got it about 1.5 years ago, I had like a couple of months where I was like, my breathing is not quite right. You go to a traditional medicine doctor, they say, oh, all your tests look great. And I'm like, I'm an athlete. And when I run, something's not adding up because I don't have the breath I should. So I think it's a lot of trusting your own body, finding someone that you can actually talk to, and also adding all the pieces of the puzzle together. Like I had conversations with your dad about sleep and about, stress, things that were really hard for me to approach in my own life, because there were things that I just didn't take seriously and I didn't want to take seriously. Like I didn't want to believe my mindset is really an obstacle if it's in the wrong place, because that's hard to accept. You're like, oh, I need to do work on me now in a different way. I can't just take a supplement or eat a different food or exercise. This was mental work. So it was hard to face that, but it was necessary. And to this day, if I go in, to see him if I feel like, oh, I feel a little off, let me go in, he'll be like, well, are you do you meditate? Are you, like, he knows in me, like, he's kind of a magician. Anyone who's met him knows, and he kind of just knows. And he's always right. I mean, it's crazy, but he's always right. And when I tweak that, I feel better. So I always tell people, if you go to a doctor and repeatedly and you don't feel better from what's happening, something's wrong. Something is wrong. If your body rejects, like, I've gone places and I take stuff and I'm like, when I go and I get a treatment at the clinic, and this is not meant to be an endorsement of the clinic, but this is really my story. But when I go, I come home and I always tell my husband it's the best night's sleep I ever had in my life, because my body welcomes, like, it knows this is good for you. It's just, so follow that gut, follow that instinct. But it gave me a really big passion, Casper, for people really trusting their own gut, having trusted relationships with trusted doctors, and pursuing paths that feel right for them, even if that may be a different path from someone else.